Welcome to the ARP-AIRE Annual APR Webinar. As we wait for everyone to just get connected and join, we'll begin with our disclaimer. In the meantime, I would love to hear where you are joining us from, how you're doing today. And thank you for joining us back. I know this is not the first APR webinar for many of you, but I do promise that we do have some new things this time. We have an exciting new format for this APR webinar. So thank you all for joining for potentially, guess your third time. Welcome everyone. And we're going to start with our disclaimer.
This presentation was produced under U.S. Department of Education contract number GS00F115CA with Synergy Enterprises, Inc. The views expressed herein do not necessarily represent the positions or policies of the U.S. Department of Education. No official endorsement by the U.S. Department of Education of any product, commodity, service, or enterprise mentioned herein is intended or should be inferred.
Now that we have been disclaimed, here are our presenters for today. My name is Inson and I am your TA. I'm a member of the OIE TA team, and we have on with us Dr. Linda Brake.
Welcome, everybody. It's good to see you today. I hope that you learn a lot about completing your APR in this webinar. And we welcome any questions in the chat, and we'll be working to help you and support you on getting those completed. Thanks.
Thank you. And we are also joined by other members of our really great OIE TA team who will be here to provide any support and guidance and answers to questions that you need. And they'll also be providing links in the chat as well as documents that relate to your APR reporting and other tools as well. So keep an eye on the chat and feel free to, like your program officer said, raise your hand or type in the chat if you have any questions at any time. Here's an overview of our topics and flow for today. Again, those of you, this might be familiar to many of you, but we will be interspersing these topics with quiz time and top tips. So we are doing a bit of a different format this year, and we do have some, just a couple of small changes from previous years as well. But we are going to go over all the parts of the APR, including the cover sheet and executive summary, section A, section B, C, and some reminders as well. Your APR is really your chance to tell your story and show your progress. So we hope that this webinar will continue to be helpful in this process. As a reminder, this APR will be due June 28th, 2024. At 4:29:59 p.m. Eastern Time. The reason for that really specific time is that at 4:30, the system will be locked and you will not be able to submit. Even if you have a draft in there, once it hits 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time, you will not be able to submit or change anything in the system. So really keep in mind that time zone, it's an Eastern time. Take a note of when this time is in your time zone, but when possible, just make sure that you have it submitted way before so that you don't even have to think about the time. If you have it submitted the week before, then yeah, this time zone is actually irrelevant to you. So that's the one to aim for. And here we have the overall timeline. So you can see a full snapshot of the year. And so the end of the grant year is actually not until November 28th. So in December 13, you will have a chance to update your APR. And that will be when the APR update is due. So your APR is just reporting on your grant progress up until April 30th. Another big tip is because the new system, the system that you guys have been using G5 does time out, we do encourage you to do your brainstorming and planning outside of the system and then transfer the information into the system. And between now and your APR due date, your technical assistance team and your program officer will be available to meet, answer questions, and provide any support you need so you can submit the APR on time and complete. You can use our Calendly link to sign up for coaching. We will be sharing that link at the end of today's session. So make sure to put these dates and times into your calendar. You may want to add even some smaller due dates in between so that you are not scrambling at the end. So as we go through today's webinar, you'll see, start thinking about what are some due dates you might want to set between now and the actual APR due date to make sure that you're not waiting until last minute, because there could be technology problems and it's just more stressful that way as well. So the purpose of the APR is that first, it is the federal grant requirement, and it is the primary document submitted that allows you to demonstrate your progress towards your project objectives. And then this information is used to determine your substantial progress. This information typically informs a continuation award decision, but as you guys are on the last year of this grant, this will actually inform any potential request for a no-cost extension, which we will discuss later, as well as the future grant funding as well. And we hope that this APR is also a good chance for you to reflect on your own progress and how you can continue your successes moving forward. This is the landing page for the G6 system, which is where you will submit your APR. We've been previously talking about the system as G5, but they are making this transition from G5 to G6. So you can see that the landing page says, welcome to G6, but the link has changed from the previous years. And we will be posting a link in the chat. Once you actually log into G6, you might actually notice G5 everywhere because the system hasn't fully transitioned to G6. So don't worry about that. If you see G6 sometimes, you see G5 other times. They're still in that transition period. So you can think of it as G5/G6, and you're going to hear both in today's presentation. But whether we're calling it G5 or G6, they are essentially the same thing right now. Another big thing to remember is that there might be system shutdowns for updates or maintenance. So that's something to plan for when you are planning your APR submission. And that's another reason to not wait until last minute in case there are any shutdowns or technical problems. You can find the exact shutdown dates as they are updated on the support page, which is provided in the chat. Thank you, Doris. So I would really recommend bookmarking these sites, and you can see the help desk number as well. Also note that the Eastern time zone is used for the help desk hours and the hours of system availability. If you do have issues or questions about the system itself, you should be reaching out to the help desk. They are the ones who can provide you with technical support with the system itself, and you can see the number in the chat. Their hours of operation are 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern time, with the exception of federal holidays. But we are here to help you, with everything else about your grant management and your reporting. But the help desk is your best source for any technical problems with the site itself. And one tool that we have that we really recommend that you actually download right now and bookmark it, save it on your desktop, print it out. Actually, that might be another good thing to do. Print it out and refer to it when you are completing your APR. Check things off as you go. It's one of my favorite things to do, just checking things off. It's so satisfying that way. And that way can also really help to double check your work. And thank you, Doris, for putting the checklist in the chat. Here's a little preview of it that you can see on the screen. And you'll see a lot of this webinar will cover some similar tips and requirements as on the checklist. As we go through each section of the APR, we will be providing link copies of the reporting forms in the chat. You can also access these forms online, and we will be putting the links in the chat as well. There will be a link where you can find the official forms, and there will also be a link to the ARP-AIRE Padlet, where you can find not just the official forms, but the various other reporting tools that we provide to just help make your reporting easier. You know exactly what we're looking for with those reporting tools. Even though they're not going to be required, those reporting tools on the Padlet will just help you know exactly what we're looking for, and it'll be really easy to use those in your reporting. For those of you who have done the APR, those forms will look familiar. You do want to make sure to check the expiration date on the top of the official forms. Make sure you're not using one of the old forms from a previous year. The expiration date is located on the top right of each of the forms that you can see circled on the screen. As of today, it should read July 31st, 2024. If you're not sure about the document you have, you can always look at the links in the chat box. We will also be posting the recording of this APR webinar, so you can pause and play as needed while you organize your information. So now let's dive into the first section of the APR, which is the cover sheet and executive summary. This hopefully looks familiar to many of you. We're gonna just quickly go through these one by one. Item 1 is your PR award number. Make sure to include your phone number. Item 7 is your reporting period, and this year your reporting period is from November 29, 2023 to April 30, 2024. So make sure to write that in the reporting period. This next section is budget expenditures, which is section 8. You can see the red circle box. That is where you are going to be filling out your federal grant funds. And these funds should reflect what you have actually drawn down. So this should match what has actually been drawn down in G5/G6 as of the reporting period end date. So even though the APR is not due until June, the amount that you put for the current budget period, well, the amount that you put for the current budget period, which is B, should be your drawdowns from November 29, 2023 to April 30th, 2024 of this year. And then your previous budget period is your total drawdown from the last grant year, which is from 11/29/22 to 11/28/23. You should leave 8C blank. So don't fill out the entire project period funds, just fill out the previous budget period and the current budget period. Let us know if you have any questions at any time. Moving on to item number 9. If you are claiming indirect costs, then you should complete items A through D as applicable. If you have any trouble with this section, you can always let us know. And from the PD meeting on our OIETA YouTube site, we also do have an indirect cost session that walks you through filling out this section. But of course, we are here to support you with that as well. For item number 10, really easy. Everyone should mark NA. And then for item number 11, everyone should mark yes and attach the corresponding policy as evidence that these data security and privacy policies are in place. And this can often be found in your employee handbook and the policies and just other policies with your organization. So make sure to attach that as a PDF to the G5. And now we have the back of the cover sheet. There are two important details to note here. Number 12 is about the performance measure status. In 12A for your APR, you'll be indicating yes or no for whether your project data is complete. If you check yes, then you're stating that you have all the data needed to fully report on all your project measures at this time. If you check no, then you're stating that some of the data is not currently available, but you will have the data at a later date. So this is usually just if you don't have just even one piece of data that's not currently available, then you will put no. If you do check no, then you will indicate the date on which the data will be available. Just a couple more notes on that. If the data will be available before November 28, 2024, which is the end of your grant period, you will put 999 for that data in section A. But if the data will be available after November 28, 2024, you'll put 0/1 for that data in section A. And we're going to go over that in a little bit more detail later. So basically, if you have any 999s in your section A, you would put no. If you don't have any 999s in your section A, you will put yes for 12A. And we'll be going over what that means later as well. So now moving on to the final item on the cover sheet. The final item is the printed name and signature of your authorized representative, which I believe is called the certifying official on G6. Make sure this is often a big barrier to submitting the APR on time. So really make sure as soon as possible, let your authorized representative know when you will be expecting them to have the signature completed, and that your authorized representative does need to actually read your APR and then sign it, because they are the ones who are kind of certifying your APR. So definitely let your authorized representative know when they can expect to receive your APR and when you need them to have the form signed by. Ideally, give them more days than you really need, just in case, so that you're not scrambling at the end. And the way this will work is you will complete the cover sheet in G5. So you'll go into G5 and you open up the cover sheet, fill in everything, and then download the completed form. And then once your APR report is done, send it over to your authorized representative and have them review the APR and then sign the cover sheet. And then you upload the complete signed form back into G6. If you have any trouble uploading your cover sheet, please email the completed and signed form directly to your program officer. But before that, you can reach out to us and we can help you with that process as well. If you do need to change your authorized representative, if there has been a change in that, you need to make sure to get that addressed as soon as possible. The project director or the current authorized representative needs to send an email or a letter to Linda on official letterhead indicating that change. And now we are moving on to our first quiz time. This is your chance to show your knowledge, review, and see if you know the key things for the cover sheet.
I'll jump in there, Inchin. So let's move on to our first quiz question. All righty, so we're going to just be focusing, and we have two quiz questions. We're just going to be focusing on the cover sheet. So here's the first question, and a poll is going to pop up for you to answer that question. Given the information below, should the grantee indicate yes or no for item 12? So here's the information or the scenario. 75% of teachers will increase their proficiency in culturally responsive strategies by at least one level in 3 of 4 categories as measured by an observation rubric. The observation data was gathered on March 2024. So again, will you be reporting yes or no for item 12? Okay. All right, let's go ahead and see what our answer is. Yes, so the correct answer is yes. You would be checking yes. Why? Because you were able to collect all the information you need for that measure in March 2024. So it's right on time for you to report for this APR. Awesome, great. Thanks for participating. And let's move to question number 2. So in question number 2, given again this information below, and this is again focused on item number 12, will you be reporting yes or no? And here's our scenario. Each year, the summer college, the poll keeps popping up on my notes. Here we go. All right, so each year, the summer college expedition will serve at least 13 juniors or seniors attending the LEA. So the summer college expedition happens in June. How will you answer question number 12? I mean, yeah. Yes or no? Again, look at the date in which you're going to be able to collect that information. That's a key hint. All right, let's take a look at what our answer should be. Okay, so you should be reporting no. And the reason is, again, that sort of key hint I gave you is when you will actually have that data. You won't have that data until June, which is after the due date of this APR. And so it's really important to differentiate with those dates. You will probably be reporting 999 in your section A. Great. Awesome job, you guys. You did really great. Moving on, I'm going to turn it over to Doris, and she's going to go over some hints regarding your cover sheet. Take it away, Doris.
Hi, thank you, Alani. Hello, everyone. I just kind of want to just recap everything Ensign has been talking about and kind of just give you some really good tips to walk away from. So if you have a notepad, some sticky notes, if you have your journal, please write these down. So number 1, as soon as you get off the Zoom, if it's not the first thing you do, I recommend you contact your budget office to forward you the drawdown reports that covers the drawdowns from the beginning of the grant year to the end of April. This is really important because then you could get a head start and start working on your APR. Sometimes our financial office or our budget office kind of takes a little bit to get our documents to us. So I recommend the first thing you do, even if it's now, type out that email, dial the number and just wait to press the call button until the webinar is over. Number 2, like Ensign said before, having your authorized representative signature is extremely important. But a tip that we give you is that number 1, go ahead and just complete your entire APR first, and then let your authorized representative know maybe a date. Plan early. Let them know when you're going to complete it and send it over them so you can sign the cover sheet and then upload it. We've seen a lot of APRs that don't have that signature, and so we really want you guys to have the best APRs of the bunch. And so I recommend just filling that out and giving your authorized rep a heads up to sign that cover sheet. And then lastly, extremely, extremely important, ensure that your indirect cost rate remains valid by verifying that it has not expired. And so this coordinator approach ensures timely documentation and compliance with the regulations. And so we really want you to have an amazing cover sheet, because when you start strong, you end strong. And so those are my 3 top tips for your cover sheet. Back to you, Ensign.
Thank you, Doris and Olani, for those great top tips and that little quiz time to make sure that we are all on the same page. And now we're going to move on to the next section of the APR, which is the executive summary. Even though we're covering the executive summary prior to the other sections, you might find it helpful to complete the remaining sections A, B, and C before drafting the executive summary. And that's because the executive summary is a 1 to 2 page narrative description of your program's overall accomplishments and highlights. So it might be helpful, to do the other sections, and then that will give you a bit better complete picture of like your overall accomplishments and the story that you want to tell. So, and another big thing is that the executive summary should not be just repeating your Section A narrative. So that's why completing the Section A narrative first might be helpful in making sure that you're not just repeating your Section A in your executive summary. You really want to think about the executive summary as a really high-level overview that tells the story of your grant year, looking at the successes and challenges of your project from November of last year through the end of April of this year, which is this reporting period for this APR. So one thing that should be captured in your executive summary is a brief overview of the program activities and progress towards the objectives. We really want you to think about how you've met or exceeded your targets, or have not met your targets, how program activities have impacted your participants, how you plan to build on your success from the current year. Really think of this as an opportunity to really celebrate the work you're doing every day in your program and how that work is impacting your students. And something that's really nice about this executive summary and cover sheet section this year is that you don't have to combine them. I know in previous years you had to combine them into one PDF and upload them. This time your cover sheet and executive summary can actually be uploaded separately. There'll be 2 different spots on G5 where you can submit them. So that is something exciting. Oh, and one more thing, the executive summary can also be where you share how your project has actually made contributions to research, knowledge, practice, or policies. What were things that were done that were really evidence-based, that were really effective, that you collected, that you have data to show is effective in your program? This is a really good place to highlight that. Another element of the executive summary is the challenges you faced. If there are goals and objectives that have not been met this year, what are they? And what caused your goals and objectives to not have been met? So for one instance, one challenge might be hiring. I know this is a common challenge that a lot of us are facing. Another example could be finding culturally relevant providers. For the challenges you share, really think about what might be at the heart of these challenges. For example, if hiring proved challenging, why was it so particularly challenging given the context? Based on those challenges, you also want to share lessons learned or insights gained. Or maybe you were able to overcome a challenge and accomplish your goals just in a different way. You can also share that in the executive summary. So, my PowerPoint ran away from me a little bit. Sorry about that. And then, there you go. And then one last thing to note is that G5 and G6 does time out. So this is an area where you might not want to be drafting this in G6, because you could be typing, you have a great executive summary, and then G6 times out on you and you lose everything. So we definitely really recommend that you draft this narrative piece outside of G6 so you don't lose anything. You can then copy and paste, and then or you can upload this document directly into G6. And now I'm going to turn it back over to Alani for quiz time.
Wow, we're buzzing through this. Awesome. So let's go. We have 2 questions in this section. Our first question, again, both of them are focused on the executive summary. Our first question will pop up is, how many pages should the executive summary be? And you have those options there. You can go ahead and pick either A, about half a page, but no more than 1 page. B, at least 1 page, but no more than 2 pages. And then C, no more than 3 pages. All right, you guys are super fast in answering that question. And the correct or the right selection would be B. Yes, and all of you are on it. At least 1 page, but no more than 2 pages. And like Inchin suggested, one of the key tips is to complete the executive summary once you've finished all the other sections. Let's move on to our next question. All right, so let's say you missed one of your targets for a project measure. Which of the following actions do you take in the executive summary? Maybe A, you don't talk about those challenges. B, share challenges meeting that measure, but do not go into detail because you can do that later in another part of the report. Or C, discuss the specific project measure and include a rationale for why you missed the target. So you can go ahead and pick your best answer. Oh, it's a toss-up right now. All righty, let's see what our answer would be. It should, okay. Sorry, there we go. There it is. So your answer should be share challenges, meeting measures, but don't go into detail. Again, remember you have 2 pages, and I bet you want to also talk about your successes and maybe some new ventures that your program is jumping into. And so don't go into detail in this area. Like you have section A, you also have maybe it's a challenge related to you can expound in section C as well. And so take advantage of those other sections. That's it for my quiz questions.
Hello. Okay, so I'm going to again give you some tips for your executive summary. So like we mentioned before, number 1, stick to the 2-page limit. This is a time for you to kind of give a quick overview. So sticking to the 2-page limit leaves you with enough energy, motivation, and also there's other sections in our APR for you to go deeper and deeper in detail. So you can put your other measures and in any extra tables, graphs. We'll talk about that later, but there's other sections for you. And so just stick to your 2-page limit for your executive summary. Tip number 2 is do not just copy and paste your information from section A to executive summary or from your executive summary to your section A. We do read them. We do take a lot of time, and we love, love, love getting to know you all through your work, through your data, through your research, and through your reporting. And so we really want to read and dive deeper and just, go through your stories. And so please do not just repeat your sections. And then our last tip of the day is we want you to think of your executive summary like you're sitting down to tell someone how the last 6 months have gone. My biggest tip is act like the tribal chair just asked you to give a quick elevator pitch about your project, of what you guys have done the last 6 months. And so we want this to be a quick overview of what good has happened, what not so good has happened. We always say the good, the bad, and the ugly. We want it all. And it doesn't even really have to be ugly, Some things, like if you've had project director turnover, We want to know that in your executive summary. If hiring didn't go so well, we want to know that. But also if, you all had really great retention and your staff from the last year are still staff this year. That's amazing information to include in your executive summary. And we want to hear that too. And so just always think about if you could tell your program officer what has been happening in the last 6 months, just think about that and write it in your executive summary. And we will move on to if there's any questions. If you have any questions about your cover sheet or your executive summary, we have your TA coach and your program officer on the call now to answer anything. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Again, yeah, if you have any questions anytime, feel free to raise your hand. Let us know in the chat. But now we will move on to section A. So here is the project status chart, which is what section A is composed of. This probably looks familiar to a lot of you. So at the top, you can see the table, what it looks like in G5/G6. So that's what it's going to look like to you. And then on the bottom is actually what we end up seeing. And you can also access that form in the chat. Thank you, Doris. You can access all the sections so far, the forms that I'd be filling out. So section A contains the bulk of the information that you will submit in your annual performance report. This is really, really important section. The purpose of these charts is to demonstrate the progress that your project has made towards the approved project objectives, as well as the GEPRA measure that you need to be reporting on. So this is a really, really important section. So we are going to go dive into a lot of detail with this. So we're going to talk first, just briefly mention unavailable data. When possible, I mean, this is the last year of your grant. When possible, don't just report 999 over 999 unless this is really true for you. Don't just report 999 over 9 because, like you're just to get it out of the way. This is the third of your project, and we know that all of you guys have data. But if you do have data that is not going to be available yet, then you will report that as 999 over 999. But you only do that. So there's data that will be available by November 28, 24, but it's not available by April 30th. Then you will report that as 999 over 999 under the actual performance data that you can see circled in green here. That's the actual performance data on the right side. But if you actually have data that will not be available by November 28, 24, then you'll report that as a ratio of 0/1 under the actual performance data. But again, because this is the last year of your grant, we really want to be reporting as much of the data that you have available as you can. Especially, again, because this is the last year. And we're going to talk a little bit more, how of what you can do in your explanation of progress if you do have a 999 over 999 or 0/1. But again, 0/1 is only if this data will not exist for this project year at all. So we're going to first take a look at GEPRA measures, which oh, and thank you, Doris, for sharing that, a screenshot of that in the chat. So the first part we're going to look at are the GEPRA measures. GEPRA measures are defined by the Education Department in the NIA. You must use the exact wording of the GEPRA, and you can see that under performance measure, you can put the GEPRA measure text. You're going to choose GEPRA from the drop-down menu as the measure type. And then you're only going to report on actual performance data for the GEPRA measure. Notice that the other three boxes are X'd out. Don't put anything in the boxes that are X'd out for the GEPRA measure. You only report the ratio under the actual performance data to reflect what you have done. So don't put any raw numbers, don't put any target numbers. And here is the only GAPRA measure you have to report on, which is the number of grantees that attain or exceed the targets for the outcome indicators for the project that have been approved by the secretary. You can find this in the NIA. So that wording, it could be a little confusing. So hopefully this clarifies how this should be reported. So this, you're going to report this as a ratio with a top number and a bottom number. The top number, the numerator, is going to be the total number of project objectives in the APR that have met or exceeded the target. And then the bottom number is the total number of project objectives that are defined in the APR. And your project objectives, we're going to talk about next. But this is how you're going to report the GAPRA measure. As you can see, it depends on your project objectives. So then here's an example of what it will look like. The GAPRA measure will have actually already been filled in for you. So you guys can thank Linda for that. She will have already put in your GAPRA measure wording for you under the performance measure box. You're going to choose from the drop-down menu GAPRA that you can see circled in red. And then let's say that you met or exceeded 3 out of 10 of your project objectives. That is what you're going to enter as the ratio. Notice that none of the other boxes are filled in for the GAPRA measure, only the ratio under actual performance data. And at the bottom here, you can see an example of an explanation of progress. You need to enter explanation of progress for every objective you enter in the APR. In this example, you can see the fictional grantee here explains which project objectives were met. We met recruitment targets for 3 of our 5 services in this case for you guys in year 3. And it gives information about steps being taken to make substantial progress on the other measures. So you can see that, like for this one, it's not going to be that long because you're going to talk about the lessons a little bit further for the project objectives. But so you can see that this explanation of progress says, please see explanations of progress of measures for the remaining objectives for details about how the progress data was collected and analyzed. This is kind of a unique GAPRA measure in that way. But you can see there just an example of an explanation of progress. Again, note that you only fill in the actual ratio and not the target ratio. The bulk of your section A is going to be reporting on your project objectives, which we also call as project measures. We use those terms interchangeably. So yeah, just think of them as being interchangeable. You have project measure, project objectives. Project measures are specific to your grant and show progress your project has made towards your objectives. So every single one of you reports on the same GAPRA measure, which is the ratio of how many project objectives you achieve versus the total number, over the total number. But project measures are specific to your own grant. They come from your original grant proposal. You are required to report on every single project measure that was approved from your grant proposal. Some of you may have revised the project measures from your grant proposal and gotten approved. Those are the ones you need to report on. You do need to report on every single of those project measures in the exact wording. They really define the scope and objectives of your overall project. So when you're entering project objectives, you have to select PROJ project from the drop-down menu. And you will again use the same wording you have entered previously in your previous APRs or in your grant application. And you're going to label them as project. For the project measures, you're going to report on both the target and actual ratio. So again, for GAPR measures, you don't report on the target, just the actual. For project measures, you have to report on both the target and the actual. Now let's take a look at this example. We're going to use another fictional grantee. So here are two examples. These are both sample project measures. Again, you'll be using the exact wording you submitted in your APR last year, which should be the same as the approved ones from your application. So the top example reads, each year the summer college expedition will serve at least 13 juniors and seniors attending LEA for this fictional grantee. And again, next you will indicate the type of measure from a drop-down menu, which is PROJ. And then because this is a project measure, you do have a target ratio. Because your project measure says it will serve at least 13 juniors, your target ratio will be 13/1. Because 13 divided by 1 is 13. And that indicates your target, which is your goal for this, as indicated by this objective. And then for your actual ratio, the ratio under actual performance data, you will put the actual data on your project. So let's say that you are this grantee and you are able to serve 15 juniors or seniors attending the LEA. In real life, you're able to get 15, then you will report 15/1 under the actual. Here's the bottom example. This one reads 100% of students participating in the SCE will complete financial aid forms and application forms for at least 2 post-secondary institutions. Again, you indicate that it's a project measure. And again, this target, let's say that so you can see that there's this internal consistency there. In the previous project objective, your actual performance data says that you served 15 juniors or seniors. That means that you have 15 students participating in the SCE. So if your target for the second project objective is 100%, then it's 15/15. So 15 divided by 15, that equals 100%. So that is the target. So you can see how those two project objectives are related. When you actually go into G6, you might want to put, the related project objectives one after the other. And then you enter your actual ratio. But for this objective, you won't actually have, let's say that this SCE hasn't actually happened yet, or it hasn't finished yet. So if you don't have the data for this yet, you will report 999/999 for the actual ratio because you don't have that data yet. And here is where it's really important. You really must, even if you put a 999/999 for the actual, you must still put a target. So for project objectives, you always put the target and the actual. And now one of the most important parts of the section A is your explanation of progress. So here is where you get to explain those ratios and what those numbers actually represent. You want to explain how and how often you collected the data. And in cases where you do not yet have the data, make sure to explain when the data will be available and compiled for reporting. And note that even though this table has 2 project objectives, you do need to provide there's only one explanation of progress box, but there's 2 objectives, but you still need to provide an explanation of progress for both of the objectives. And you can see that they're labeled. They're labeled 1A and 2B. So make sure to label which objective your explanation of progress is referring to, especially when there's only 1 box for the explanation of progress. And so make sure to label that really clearly. And if you report 999 over 999, since this is the last year of this grant, really explain what data you have so far. Like for instance here, even if you don't have the final data yet, in your explanation of progress, you can say, oh, right now, there are 8 students that are currently in the process of completing the forms, and we are working on reaching other students. So when you put 999 over 999, really make sure to explain where are you currently with the project, explain what data you have so far, and if you're facing any challenges, and if you are, how you're addressing them, just to let us know where you are at. And you will be required to provide an APR update in December to update us on the final numbers for that objective. Any questions so far? So here's some further detail about the explanation of progress sections at the bottom of those project status charts. So when you're writing explanation of progress, you want to provide both quantitative and qualitative data that gives the reader insight, not only about whether your goals were met, but also about the background and context under which you were operating, as well as any challenges you overcame. So in this explanation of progress, you should really explain how you've met or made progress towards a measure, and if it was not met, provide an explanation of why. And really, really importantly, this is where you need to describe what your ratios are actually measuring. Like, what do they mean? And you should also explain how you collected the data and the frequency of your data tracking or collection. You can share any measurement tools that you have. Explain how the data was analyzed and evaluated. And also briefly describe activities and accomplishments related to the objective. This explanation should be different from your executive summary. And again, very importantly, if a measure was not met, or if you put a 999 over 999, really make sure to explain why, when that data will be available, and like what data you have so far. Any data that you have so far, we will love to know. If you do have challenges, explain how you plan on addressing those challenges. So here are the criteria that we look for in the explanation of progress. The explanation of progress should provide details about the reported ratios. It might be helpful to state very clearly for your reviewer what the numbers represent. What did that 15 represent? Do they represent people? Do they represent events? The explanation text should be clearly linked to each listed measure. Don't make your reviewer guess which measure is being discussed. Label them 1A, label them 2B, 3A, 3B. The final one is often the most overlooked. The explanation of progress should explain how the data is collected and compiled for reporting, and make sure to address that. So keep in mind these look fors. We are also going to thank you for putting the look fors already in the chat. Thank you, Doris. Keep this in your head, and you can also refer to the chat. And we're going to take a look at an explanation of progress example. Again, this is an example that has those look fors that we discussed. So this is an example of explanation progress for the GAPRA measure. So you can see it in the highlighted sections. The GAPRA measure asks you to explain how many project objectives thank you, Doris. Yeah, the GAPRA measure asks you to explain how many project objectives you accomplished over the total number of ones you had. So you might have put 2 out of 5, and you can see the explanation of progress here explains what 2 over 5 means. You exceeded the target outcome for 2 out of 5 measures. It explains what data is missing and explains when that data might be available based on, and then you can also explain if the data is not available, are you expecting to achieve that target outcome? Explain when there's objectives that was below the target outcome. Explain the challenges, what is causing the difficulties. And then also explain what are you going to do to overcome these challenges. If you aren't doing so already, I know doing these explanation of progress is a great way for you to think about and reflect on your program and what you can improve on. So this is an example you can refer to, and you can also see it in the chat as well. And this slide deck will also be posted in the Padlet. And then looking ahead, there will be an APR update. That will not be due until after the end of the grant year, which is November 28, 2024. So it gives you a little bit of time after the end of the grant until December 13 to update your APR with any information that now you have. You are required to submit an APR update if you had any measures supported as 999, or if you just have any, just updates that you want to make to the numbers as well, if there was new developments in your project and so on. And we will give more information about that down the line. Any questions so far that we have not already answered? Thank you guys for making it through the really, really long section. Now it's time to test your knowledge with Alani.
Okay, you guys did it. We got through section A, which is really one of the key pieces of your APR. We only have one question for section A. And that question is, based on the information below, should the grantee indicate 999 or 0/1 in the project status chart for section A? So here's your scenario. The project measure is 90% of participating students will graduate on time. Again, a key factor in being able to answer this is, when are you collecting that data? And so would you be including 999 or reporting 999 or 0/1? Right? You guys are on it with answering those questions. Let's see. All right, so the answer is 999. And I'm gonna hand that back over to Doris.
Awesome. Hello, everyone. Glad to know you guys are still with us. And so one of the first tips we would like to give you for section A is to double check that you have included all of your GEPR and project measures in section A. So like Instant said in the beginning, this year, your APR reporting is gonna look a tad bit different. So one, like she said in the beginning, you have to upload your cover sheet and executive summary separately. And then also another change is that when you go inside your G6 reporting package, and also if you can log into G6, we recommend you do so now. Check during this webinar, because if you cannot, please contact your program officer, Linda, because when you go inside your G6 this year, you're going to see that you get to report on your GEPR and project measures separately. And so one thing we really, really want to emphasize right now is when you go in and you input all your GEPR measures and you write your amazing explanation of progress, you're gonna have to save it, and you're gonna find some wording that says add project objective. You will manually have to click and keep clicking and saving to add as many project objectives you have. So if you have 16, you're going to have to manually click and input and save 16 project objectives. So we highly recommend that you look into your past APR, your last year APR, and make sure that you are including the same project objectives and you're reporting on your same project objectives. So we highly recommend you just to remember in the back of your head, okay, I have to manually input everything individually this year. Moving on to number 2. Writing your explanation of progress, we recommend you typing this out separately outside of G6, because G6 isn't going to catch any grammar checks, spelling checks, errors, or anything like that. And also, G6 could time out, and G6 doesn't have a save button. And so if you're in the middle of typing this really great explanation of progress and it times out on you, it's gone. And so we recommend you just filling it out in a Word doc or PDF or Google Drive sheet, anything that you can just copy and paste it and save it and add another one really quickly. And last but not least, we want you to tell us the whole story. Even if you input a 999, even if you input a 0/1, there's still great gems in that story. Talk to us about, okay, yes, you may have a 999 now, but what have you been doing this year to make sure that that 999 changes or that 0/1 changes? Have you administered any surveys? Have you talked to any elders, any community members? Have you met someone new in another district, or you made a partnership, or you just met someone new that could be a partner down the road? It may seem really, really little to you, but to us, those are really great gems. And so even if you don't have any data, we still want to hear your explanation of progress. You know, how did you do this? What are you going to use this data for? How are you going to sustain this data even after the grant ends? So we want to see that in your progress as well. And so this is your chance to tell your story. This is your chance to, you know, grab the mic and just talk and just shed amazing light on what you have been doing these past 6 months. And so those are my top tips for your Section A. Back to you, Inchin.
Thank you. And Alani, did you want to
Yeah.
circle back to this question?
Yeah, I think both of, if you respond, well, let me take a step back. If your graduation, let's say, is at like in mid or June, July, then you would probably respond to this question by reporting 999. However, for example, in my state right now, our graduations are finished at the beginning of May. So I would actually have some data to report. So really, one of the key, again, factors I want to mention is like, when is graduation happening as it relates to when you the reporting date for your APR. That was it. Thank you.
Thank you. That is a really great point. Yeah, you are reporting up to April 30th for this APR. So any data that you have before April 30th, then you should definitely report. Yeah. Okay, so now moving on to section B, everyone's favorite topic, budget. I just maybe sarcasm for some of you, it may not be sarcasm for some of you, but this is a very, very important section. One of the sections of the budget is the budget narrative, and this is where you're going to put your budget narrative. You can see under budget information. So you're going to see that in G6 for that. And thank you for putting that in the chat as well. So this is the section where you will provide a narrative of your spending for only this grant period from November 29th of last year to April 30th of this year. That's really important. Make sure you're only reporting on this grant period, not any of your previous grant periods, which is a common mistake we have been seeing. This section should expand as you type into the form, so it might look really small to you, but it will expand naturally. We want you to ideally organize this section by budget category. This really makes it easy for your reviewers to connect the text with the numbers and categories reported on the budget reporting tool, which we will discuss in a bit. So it might be really helpful to craft this narrative in a separate document and then putting it in again, just to make sure it doesn't time out on you. But the budget narrative is required. It is commonly a left out section, but this is a required section. You really need to do the budget narrative and describe your spending so far. So here are some reminders for this budget narrative section. So included in your budget narrative should be all the funds expended and obligated, even if it's not reflected in G5 yet, from November 29th of last year through April 30th of this year, which is this reporting period. So that's why we really recommend maintaining your own tracking of expenses, because sometimes it can take a while for fiscal offices to post and draw down expenses that you know have been obligated. So we want to hear about what has actually been drawn down and what has also been obligated. You will also discuss your G5 drawdown frequency. if applicable, you should also explain why drawdowns did not happen at least once a quarter. As you may know, drawdowns are really required at least once per quarter, preferably monthly. And if that hasn't been happening, if you're not drawing down at least once per quarter, what are you doing to try to remedy that situation? We also love to hear how you tracked your expenditures independent of your budget office. If you do anticipate that you will have any unexpended funds remaining at the end of the grant year, you should explain why. You should discuss how much funding you anticipate remaining and explain why. For example, salary for someone that's not hired, contract funds for a class that did not occur. You should definitely be doing your best to expend funds according to your proposal, but do be realistic about what you will actually be able to anticipate by the end of the year. Sometimes we see someone say that they will spend down $600 million, I mean, not million, $600,000 by the end of the year, when the first half of the year they only expended like 50,000. And that is very unclear, because sometimes if that's not accompanied with the explanation of how that money will be expended down, then it will not be very clear to the reviewer. So, be realistic about how much you will actually anticipate spending by the end of the year, and make sure to explain this thoroughly. But again, of course, you should be, trying to expend according to your plans. Spending isn't going as planned. Again, of course, the priority is to adhere to the plan outlined in your application, but things come up, life happens, just always, there's always no stuff that doesn't go as planned, and that's okay. The key is that you need to have a plan, and you need to be able to explain it. And this is the last year of this grant, so you guys are in a special year. So in cases where there are remaining funds and you foresee a need to apply for a no-cost extension, which we usually call an NCE, it's really, really, really crucial to outline how those funds will be utilized to fulfill approved activities during the NCE period. However, it is really important to note that this APR does not serve as an application for the NCE. So even if you put that you have carryover in your budget, that's not your application for NCE. We will provide further instructions on how to request an NCE later this grant year. At this point, approximately half or more of your grant year's budget should have been expended. So if that's not happening, you want to be thinking about why, looking at your project objectives, and you should submit a budget revision if needed. A budget revision can be submitted anytime during a grant period. Try to avoid September, try to avoid the last month of your grant period, but otherwise, a budget revision can be proposed anytime to ensure successful project implementation. And you do that by emailing your budget revision to Linda. We do have a budget revision form in the Padlet as well. The APR Section B is not a budget revision. You might discuss your plans to submit a budget revision in the APR, but your APR is reporting on how you have been spending your money in the past. Whereas the budget revision is how you might want to change how you spend the money in the future. So the APR is not a budget revision. You have to submit a budget revision separately. APRs are all about what you have been spending your money on. So this is actually a really good time of the year to also look into submitting a budget revision if you find that this current budget is not serving the purposes that you needed to. Another thing that will be really helpful in Section B is this optional budget reporting tool. So we have provided this, and we will be putting that in the chat. And you can also find this optional budget reporting tool on the Padlet. And I want to just show that real quick. Sometimes this can be confusing. This is sometimes a mistake that we see. So I want to just really clarify that. In the Padlet, there is a budget revision form, which you can see is not for the APR. That's what you use if you want to revise your budget. And then there's the budget reporting tool, with the optional budget reporting tool, which is what you can use for the APR. This is, we call it optional because you do not have to use this form specifically. You might have another tool that your financial office uses or that you prefer to use. So this, you don't have to use this reporting tool, but if you choose not to use this tool and use your own tool, it must include all the information contained in the optional budget reporting tool. So that's why we do encourage you to use this tool, because it has all the information that we need from you. But if you do choose to not use this tool, make sure that you still include all of this information in a separate format. So what are the elements of the budget reporting tool? And here's a big tip for you guys. We have designed this form to do a lot of the work for you. Only the columns that are empty, all the way down that you can see highlighted in yellow needs to be filled out. All the other fields will auto-calculate for you. Another thing that's different, with this budget reporting tool from the budget revision form is that you don't need to actually report on discrete line items. You don't need to tell me every staff member you have. You don't need to tell us every time you travel, where all the fringe items, where all your equipment, where all your supplies. You actually only need to report on the overall category. I mean, you can if you would like to, but you do not have to. You only need to report on your approved budget, your funds drawn down from G5, funds obligated but not yet drawn down, rationale for available funds, amount you anticipate spending by November, and your intended use of any potential no-cost extension funds. You only need to do that for the overall category. And really make sure that you complete both the numeric sections and the narrative sections. Really explain how this budget has been used to support your approved objectives. And thank you, Doris. Yeah, if you have any questions, we're happy to work on your budget with you, check over them with you. You can email us, and we can also, have a coaching call with you as well. Thank you, Doris. And I want to touch a little bit more on columns F and I, which are the justification columns. You do need to complete those. So column 5 is the rationale for available funds. Here is where you need to provide a narrative to describe why you have the amount in column E available and how you plan to expend those monies during the remainder of the current grant year. And then column I is your intended use of the remaining funds beyond the grant end. This is the last year of the grant, so if you do plan to potentially request NCE, this is where you will provide details about how you plan on expending those carryover funds if an NCE is approved. Again, the APR is not an application for an NCE, but your working here could be used as a factor in consideration of any request for NCE. So make sure to have a really good plan if you do plan to apply for an NCE. Any questions so far? Should column B include carryover funds available? Column B is the column for the approved budget. So just what is your approved budget for this grant year? This is just if you do plan to apply for NCE, make sure to explain what you will be using that money for. Again, this is not your actual application for the NCE. I don't know if that answers your question. Let me know, and feel free to chime in.
Yeah, it does. I just wanted everyone to be aware of the fact that that is just your year 3 funding. I know that many of you have additional carryover, but that is not included on this budgeting tool.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for clarifying. I actually misunderstood your question. Yeah, so this approved budget should not include your carryover from year 2, just your approved budget for this year. Is that what you intended?
It is.
Okay, yeah, just want to make sure I understood you correctly. Thank you. Okay. We have made it to quiz time. You guys are doing so good. Thank you for sticking with us.
Yeah, okay. For this section, we actually have 3 questions. I'm going to take question number 6, which is actually a bunch of questions. The first one, and you can go ahead, there it is, and let us know if you do plan on using that optional budget reporting tool. This question just sort of gives us a sense about how many people, how many grantees will be using that tool. And then let's move on to the second question. Do you need a Section B budget narrative if you use the optional budget reporting tool? And that's a yes or no answer. Again, do you need a Section B budget narrative if you use the optional budget reporting tool? The third question under question number 6 is, do you need to include the information on the optional budget reporting tool if you provide a Section B budget narrative? Again, that's another yes or no question. You guys are on it, already in there answering the question. It's great to see that, you know, many of you are going to be using the optional budget reporting tool. Again, it has some benefits in that information or fields are already self-calculating, so you don't have to do the math. That's a great help. Let's see. So when we look at that second question, the answer is yes. Awesome. Great job, you guys. And then on to that third question on the screen, we got a kind of a mix. The answer, again, should be yes. So whether or not you are, you do need to complete the budget narrative as well as an optional budget reporting tool. Now, let's say, I think Inchin brought this up. Let's say you don't want to use that optional budget reporting tool and you want to use another way of explaining that. You do, however, need to make sure that you are including all of the same elements that and information that are found in the optional budget reporting tool. Awesome. So thanks for answering those questions. We'll move on to the next question. I know, Inchin, did you wanted to take this question?
Thank you. Yes, and yeah, here is the next question. Take a look at this form that you see on the screen. And I'm trying to launch this poll. And is this the optional budget reporting tool for the APR? See, this is up. Actually, we're doing very good. Yes, this is not the budget reporting tool for the APR. This is a mistake that we have sometimes seen, so I just wanted to highlight this. This form that you see is actually the budget revision tool. You can see it has the existing grant budget and then the requested revised budget. Please, please, please do not submit a budget revision in your APR, because that's not the APR is about. The budget revision has to be sent separately to Linda. So the one that's pictured here is not for the APR, it's actually the budget revision form, which you can use to submit a budget revision. And again, if you're using the Padlet, which I hope you guys all are, we're really working hard to keep them all updated. There's the budget revision form if you want to submit a budget revision to change how you will use your money in the future. And then here's all the different APR forms. And then down here, you can see the APR budget reporting tool, the optional one. The optional one, again, even though it says it's optional, all the elements on that tool is required, and that is actually where you're going to use for the APR.
Okie doke.
Thank you. I'll turn it
Yeah.
back over
Yeah.
to Alani.
Okay, so our last question for this section, on section B, is which columns must be completed on the optional budget reporting tool? And so this question is really asking which columns are you actually putting in information to? So you have the column letters there, and you can go ahead and select those columns in which you actually have to put information in. All righty, we got you folks going. Great. All right, let's take a look at what columns we should be filling out, or you should be filling out. Okay, so definitely B, because you're taking that approved budget and putting that number in there. Definitely C, because you're going to share how the actual funds that were drawn down. Definitely D, again, because your expenditures, you're going to share that what's not drawn down. And F, again, that's a narrative portion. G and I again is the second column that you provide words, not numbers. The reason why you are not completing E and H is that is your column that automatically calculates. So great job, you guys. I'm going to turn it over to Doris for those top tips.
Hi everyone, so I'm back. And so for the sake of time, I'm going to go really quickly through our budget. And so our first tip to give you is please make sure you submit both section B narrative and your optional reporting tool. So it could either be the reporting tool we give you, or you got creative and made your own, but please make sure you submit both because they complement each other. You can't have a PB&J without peanut butter and jelly. So we need both this year for your APR. But the biggest thing we want to leave you with is you have to submit it as a PDF. If you upload it as an Excel, unfortunately through G6, when we receive everything, we cannot open an Excel. So please, please, please convert it into a PDF. If you need help doing that, or that's something you need technical assistance with, please schedule a coaching call and we will make sure that we can help you with those as well. Tip number 2 is remember, if you do not if you do not submit our optional budget reporting tool that we have provided, please make sure that your own version has the same information in another format in a PDF. And so please make sure whichever format you choose talks about how much carryover you're anticipating, how much you want to spend. How come you have all these available funds? What are your plans to using these funds? We want to read that information and make sure you have both the numbers and the reasoning behind it as well. And last but not least, please let your budget office know what information you need right away. So like I said before, draft up that email now, dial that number now, do whatever you need to do right now so that when we say goodbye today, you can go ahead and get that request in. And another thing I wanted to add is that please make sure that you are communicating and documenting to your program officer how often you have drawn down this year. Have you drawn down since the beginning of the year? What is your drawdown schedule? Talk to us about that too. Talk to us about that financial process and what does it look like? So those are our tips for you today, and I'll pass it back to Ensign. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Let us know if you have any questions at any time. And now we're going to move on to our final section, guys. We're almost at the end. Final section, section C. And this is the additional information section where you get to include any information that did not fit into sections A or B. You might include photos or student work samples, news clippings, accolades from other agencies and organizations. We love to see them all. It's been one of the best parts of the APR to review. Here's more useful ways to make the most of section C. Consider including success stories, challenges, status of partnerships, conclusions about the success of the project and its impact, any anticipated outcomes or benefits from your project, any barriers you might have encountered. Your project objectives may not tell the whole story of your project. So are there any other, unexpected things that have come up? Any advice to other educators that are interested in your project? How did your original ideas change as a result of conducting the project? If applicable, describe your plans for continuing the project, like sustainability, capacity building, or disseminating the project results. Everything must be uploaded as one PDF. And of course, we want to make this as easy for you as possible. So we have another tool to support you in your APR reporting, which is what we call the optional Section C reporting tool. Because there are some existing directions that we just covered, but there's some key information that the OIE really needs from you that is not currently captured in the current 524B forms elsewhere. So again, this is another optional reporting tool where even if you don't use the tool, you must submit the same information in another format in Section C. But if you use this optional Section C reporting tool, you do not need to submit another narrative unless you would like to. And of course, we always love to see more. And you can see the optional Section C reporting tool in the chat. Thank you, Doris. I encourage you to open it or download it and follow along. So just really briefly walking through the items on this optional reporting tool. And again, even if you don't use this reporting tool, you have to include this information in another format in Section C. The OIE really needs this information from you. We want to know what the grade level certified the program. We want to know about the number of unique students served during this reporting period and how much you anticipate serving throughout the whole grant year. We want to know about the number of full-time staffing, the part-time staffing. You might have a full-time employee that only works part-time on your project. They will be considered a part-time staff, even if they're full-time to your organization. We want to know about when you're providing these services, how you're providing them in person, virtual, or hybrid. And continuing on, we want to know just all the services that you're provided just during this grant year. We're just talking about this grant year. What language learning services, what evidence-based strategies are used in the program, your partners, active versus inactive, key personnel changes, how you plan to sustain your program activities beyond the funding period. This is especially important to be thinking about now that this is the last year of this grant. Tell us about any plan changes, greatest success and greatest challenge. You want this to be detailed, but still concise. And now moving into our final quiz time with Olani.
Yes, sorry, my mute button got stuck. Okay, question number 9, 10, and 11. We're like rounding the turn. All right, so this is a true or false. Let's see. Section C is a place for you to put any information that did not fit in other sections. Is that true or false? Go ahead and put that in. Awesome. Yes, it is true. Great job, you guys. All right, moving on to the next question. True or false again? Section C must include all information required by optional Section C reporting tool, even if the tool was not used directly. Is that true or false? Again, great answer. It is true. So remember, if you're choosing not to use the optional C reporting tool, please in that Section C include all the information that is being requested in that optional reporting tool. Moving on to the next question. If you submit the Section C optional reporting tool, you must also submit a Section C narrative. That is true or false? Awesome. Most people selected false. If you're going to do that optional Section C, and you don't have any other information you want to provide in a narrative, then you don't need to do that narrative section. Again, please feel free to include any other attachments to give us a really great picture into what's happening in your program. All right, I'm going to turn over to Top Tips with Doris.
Hello, everyone. I just want to take a moment and say thank you. If I could send virtual applause to everyone for staying with us this long. So here's your last bit of top tips for you today. Again, please upload your Section C tool as a PDF. If you choose to use our tool, please upload it as a PDF into G6. Answer each question on the tool completely. But succinctly, we wanna hear from you, but we also know that this report is long. Okay, you have a lot of information to give, and so we want to make sure you give us brief but concise responses. And last but not least, remember that you can also submit any of the information that doesn't fit in any other sections of your APR into Section C. So I know tons of you are serving students. Some of you are watching folks walk across the stage for the first time in their family. Y'all are literally witnessing history in these people's lives. And so we want to see that. We want to hear that. If you have pictures, if you have articles, if you had a kiddo go out and write something, publish something, you know, you guys made an impact in their lives. So we want to know that. We want to hear that. We want to hear what's happening in your lives as your project directors. You guys are all a part of something very important in Indian country. So selfishly, we want to know, we want to hear it, we want to see it, we want to congratulate you. And so this is a great space in the APR to submit that. I know in our communities we don't like boasting, you know, it's a taboo thing to boast, but this is a time for you to just sing loud, sing praises about your team, about your kids, about your community members, the elders, the projects, anything. And so these are our tips for today, and we are really looking forward to seeing what you guys have done this year. Thank you.
Wow, thank you. Cannot have put it better. This is the last section of the APR. We're just going to wrap up with some final reminders. Let us know if you have any questions so far. And again, big round of applause to my team and to yourself. And now I just want to quickly wrap some things up with some final important reminders and tips. The G6 system is kind of weird with a mixture of things you enter directly and a mixture of things you have to upload. So here's a great quick cheat sheet on what is already in G6 and what you have to upload. So the cover sheet is already in G5. You have to fill that in G5, print it, get it signed, and then scan it and upload it back into G5 or G6. That's why I see the cover sheet in both columns. It's really weird that way, but that is what you have to do. And again, get your authorized representative on the same page as you as to when they can review the APR and when they got to sign it by. The executive summary, you have to actually type it outside of G6 in the provided form and then upload it into G5 or G6. Section A, you directly manually enter into G6. So, but you should probably do the narrative sections of Section A outside of G6 and then copy and paste it in just so it doesn't time out on you. Anytime you have to type long things in G6, type it outside so that you don't lose your progress. And then all the other sections, you have to fill it out outside of G6 and then upload it into G6. Just a quick note about no cost extension. Again, more information will be coming, but we have been getting some questions, so wanted to touch on that. A no cost extension is maximum 1 year. If there's project objectives that have not been met, and if you have funds remaining after November 28th, but your top priority is to continue spending down those funds during this grant year to meet your project objectives and provide your participants the timely and effective service that they did and that you guys have been already doing. So such a good job on. A couple more important reminders: only the grant project director off record may submit the report, and G6 will not submit reports. Once 430 hits, it's over. So make sure to set a deadline for yourself that is way ahead of this, because your authorized representative also needs to review the APR and sign it. You will not be able to go into G6 after the deadline. Another big tricky thing is make sure your APR is actually submitted. This has happened to some grantees. You have to confirm your submission of the APR 2 times. You're going to click submit, and it's going to make sure they're going to ask if you're sure you want to submit. You got to submit again. If you don't do it 2 times, if you don't click that button 2 times, it is not actually submitted. It might look like it's submitted, but it's not actually submitted. So really, really make sure that it is fully submitted and not leave it in draft form. And again, the APR due date, if you haven't gotten that down already, but have this due date earlier as well. And thank you, yes, for launching the poll. And now let's key takeaways. This is, if the only thing you remember from today's webinar are these next 3 steps, I will die happy. Okay, so make sure log into G5 and G6 like right now. Make sure you can see your reporting package. Okay, and then contact your fiscal office about your drawdown report. You only need it up until April 30th, so they can provide the report to you right now. And also let your authorized representative know today when they need to review the APR and sign the cover sheet. Remember, give them plenty of time to do that. And thank you, everyone. Thank you for staying past time. Now we're a little bit over time. We are here to help you. Here is our technical assistance opportunity. Our next office hours is the day before APR is due. We hope to see you all at office hours with your APRs already submitted. And if not, you know, we are there to help you. And if you have submitted, we will definitely celebrate. And here is you can book coaching with us here, and you can also email us at these emails. And please we really value your feedback. You guys are sharing so much data with us with the APR, and we also collect data on whether we have been of service to you. So please provide us with your feedback. If you want to provide written feedback, there is a space all the way down the bottom to do that. We also, do our own reviews and really value your feedback. This is anonymous. And thank you so much again for staying us past time. We do value your time, so thank you so much. And let us know if we could ever be of any support. And thank you for all the amazing work you do. And we really look forward to hearing your story and the APRs.